I finally got to give the Surron Ultra Bee a try, and I figured out whether or not it was worth the price, how it stacks up against gas-powered full-size dirt bikes as well as other e-bikes, and figured out whether or not it's an adequate trail bike for tight single track. And today, I'm going to be sharing the answers to all those questions with you as I give my first impressions of the Surron Ultra Bee, which is Surron's entry into the mid-size 125cc comparable class of dirt bike. But before we get into all that, I want to give a huge thanks to Kibuk Cycle Sales in Kittanning, Pennsylvania for providing the bike for this video. If you're around the Western PA area and are interested in purchasing a Surron or gas-powered dirt bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides, and more, please be sure to stop by Kibuk Cycle Sales and check out their awesome selection. I'm also trying to reach 5,000 subs. It's free and it really helps me out, so hit that button below and join the Supermoto crew today.
Little sketchy root section. And some more off camber. Let's get up to the left of the tree. Okay.
So let's hop right into it. The Surron Ultra Bee that I rode in this video was completely stock aside from bigger tires, which I'll discuss later in the video. And I believe the handlebars are aftermarket as well. The only major difference was the bigger tires. And I will talk about how that kind of changes things further in the video as well. The Ultra Bee comes with 3 modes: daily, eco, and sport. Now, I preferred sport the whole time I was riding, basically, but daily and eco can be used if you're trying to eliminate wheel spin on the technical stuff. And when I was riding the single track and some pretty tight technical sections of this trail, I did find myself switching into the daily and eco mode just to test them out and see if that did help eliminate some of the wheel spin. And it definitely did. It did work, but I used it sparingly. I pretty much preferred sport mode the whole time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the power delivery of each mode. Basically, the sport mode is just like raw power. If I would describe it to a gas-powered dirt bike, it's kind of like when the power band kicks in on a 125 two-stroke, or slightly not quite as much power as like a 4-stroke 250 race bike, like a motocross bike. The power is really snappy in sport mode, and the wheel spins very easily out from under you. So if you crack the throttle wide open, the wheel will spin. With the daily and eco mode, it was a lot more reserved. It kind of just rolled on nice and gently, sort of like a beginner trail bike. It seemed kind of tamed down, stuff of that nature. It wasn't as punchy and as snappy. The eco mode being really slow and more of like a crawl. The daily mode was a little more powerful, like it got up to a higher speed as well, it felt like to me, but it wasn't as punchy as the sport mode was. Now, how does it feel to ride the bike? The chassis was definitely narrower, and also the bike is much lighter than the full-size bike. So it did seem very fun and playful. The electric power delivery is really interesting, and it being so light as well, it did feel like it was kind of like a rocket under my feet. But the bike being narrow kind of made it feel like you're not really on a full-size dirt bike. Although I will say it felt much closer to a full-size dirt bike when you compare it to the Light Bee or like a pit bike or something like that. And that's kind of what it felt like to ride it. Now with the bigger, wider tires on it, it did seem like it tracked a lot better. And I don't know exactly what the stock tires would feel like, but being that the stock tires were a little skinnier, I would imagine that it doesn't track as nice through technical trail as much. So you might have issues here and there. I definitely would recommend putting the beefier tires on it. It performed really well with them on it, and I was very pleased with that. Now, as far as like trail riding and that sort of thing, the Ultra Bee's power was completely adequate for that sort of terrain and the trails. You just kind of had to get used to, if you were in sport mode, figuring out how to control that wheel spin. You don't have a clutch and you're not shifting gears or anything like that. So you kind of really just only have your throttle to control how much you want the wheel to spin and how much power you want to give it. It took a little bit to learn kind of how little I had to give the throttle, especially when in sport mode. I only twisted the throttle like very, very slight amounts, especially when I was going up like a technical little steep section or something right out of a turn where I didn't want the wheel to spin. I wanted to kind of just like crawl up over the hill, especially if it was like slippery terrain or over roots or logs. I kind of just had to get used to being very precise with my throttle control so as not to spin the rear wheel. But I would say the power was definitely adequate for these trails, and the Ultra Bee performs great as a trail bike. I haven't gotten to use it on a motocross track, indoor arena cross track, or anything like that, and I hope to do that in the future as well, and I would certainly be making videos on that in the future when I get the chance. But I can imagine, as far as the power goes, it definitely is adequate for hitting probably small to medium sized jumps. Some of the bigger jumps, it might be difficult to get up to speed for those, but for the smaller to medium sized jumps, it would do just fine. As for the suspension, it had kind of like a bouncy feeling. I don't really know much about the technical aspects of suspension, so I'm not really going to pretend to even talk about that sort of thing, but at least to me, the Surron Ultra Bee's suspension doesn't seem as substantial as a full-size dirt bike suspension. It did feel a little more like mountain bike suspension. Although it was beefier suspension than on the Light Bee, the smaller Surron, it didn't feel quite as sturdy as suspension of a full-size motocross bike or woods bike. But it did have a very light, fun, and playful feeling, and you could kind of like bounce over obstacles and jumps and kind of hit rollers or braking bumps and just kind of bounce around. And I don't know, it just felt very playful, and it was really fun to ride, honestly. The suspension, I didn't personally have any issues with it, other than the fact that it does seem a little light compared to a full-size bike. But no issues there. I still had a ton of fun on it. Honestly, no complaints. Now, here are some stats about the bike. These are just the stats that I care about. I know nothing about electronics or battery or anything like that, so I'm just going to give it to you in layman terms. This is like basically the stuff that I would want to know if I was buying this bike. The range, I'm getting this straight from the website. It says it's up to 90 kilometers or like 56 miles of riding on a single charge. Now, I'm imagining that's probably on the lower modes. I'm not really sure what it is in each mode. So obviously, if you're running sport mode, the battery's going to die quicker. If you're running daily or eco mode, it's going to last longer. That's just how it works. Also, if you're riding up and down hills on a lot of like difficult terrain, it's going to wear the battery out much faster than if you were just riding on flat terrain. I charged the bike up fully, and I got a whole evening's riding in, probably about maybe 1.5 to 2 hours of riding, and it was pretty cold. And also we were riding a ton of really steep and technical terrain, doing hill climbs and stuff a lot. And the battery ended up being about somewhere around 15% at the end of it. So I got a full batteries run, and I was tired. I basically had a full night of riding. Depending on the terrain you're doing and that sort of thing, it's obviously going to vary, but I really didn't have any issues with the amount of charge that it had. As far as the brakes go, they were great. 240 millimeter hydraulic disc brakes, front and rear. Felt like a really nice downhill mountain bike. The thing locked up when you needed it to. I had no issues with the brakes whatsoever. The tires that come stock are 80/100 by 19. And I believe this one had the 100/90 by 19s on it. That's comparable to like a YZ125 rear tire. I'm not exactly sure what the front was, but I know that they told me that they put bigger tires on this bike. Not exactly sure what they put on it, but I know they were a little bigger than stock. And like I said before, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about technical suspension specs, but based on the website, it says that the shock and forks are fully adjustable with 240 millimeters of travel. So if that's something that you enjoy and like to tinker with, have at it. It's fully adjustable. It also has a headlight that you can switch on and off, which is something that the Surron Light Bee does not have. It has a headlight, but you can't switch it on and off. On the Ultra Bee, you can switch the headlight on and off, which I really like. And it also has a high and low beam, which I did get to test out a little bit. And it was really nice. I had no complaints about the light. And another thing I want to mention is there's basically no maintenance on these things. Charging is super easy. You just plug it into a wall, plug it into the bike, and you're good to go. It's pretty quick and really no engine maintenance or anything like that. Really all you'd have to do is tires. I mean, you'd have to change brakes, of course. And there's no clutch to worry about. That makes it easy for beginners, I would say. And the fact that you can put it in different modes and sort of tame it down also makes it good for beginners. And I will say the only thing was not having a clutch and having the rear brake be a hand brake is kind of a weird adjustment for me, coming from gas-powered bikes, having a rear foot brake and a clutch. It was a little bit of an adjustment, getting used to that. I wasn't able to like feather the clutch to kind of work on that traction, and had to manipulate the traction based on my throttle control. And also I did do a little figure 8 turn track with my buddies, and I was kind of starting to like feather what I would normally feather the clutch. I was like feathering the rear brake. I'm not really sure if that's good technique or not, but regardless, it is something of a weird adjustment to get used to that if you're not used to it. Now, the price of the Ultra Bee, I was seeing online it ranged from like $5,600 to $6,700. I know that's a big range. I'm not sure exactly where it falls in that range, but regardless, that's kind of a general idea of the price. $5,600 to $6,700, that's what I was seeing online. It's definitely more of a chunk of change than the Surron Light Bee, which I saw around like $4,400 to $4,700. Is it worth the extra $2,000, a step up from the Light Bee? It depends on what you're doing with it. Like, if you just want a pit bike or just something for fun, I would say you don't need to spend the extra $2,000, just go for the Light Bee. But if you're looking for something more capable, something much more comparable to like a full-size dirt bike, I would say it's totally worth it. The extra $2,000 is certainly worth it. It takes it from basically a pit bike or an e-mountain bike and turns it into something that could be used and has been used as a full-size dirt bike. It handles those situations completely adequately, and that price range you're getting at, sort of like a YZ125, something around there, it's pretty comparable, I would say. And it's also a ton cheaper than something like the Stark Varg. I think those are around $15,000. I might be a little off, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that the Ultra Bee is far less than the Stark Varg. And so, you know, honestly, I think it's a lot of bang for your buck. It's a super enjoyable bike to ride. It gives gas-powered bikes a run for their money, and the basically no maintenance aspect of it makes it so approachable for beginners. It's light and very capable on all sorts of terrain. I'll take every chance I can get to ride one, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Once again, huge thanks to Kibuk Cycle Sales for providing the bike. That's all for now. Soup out.